Let's go back in time. We're in Athens, around 335 BC. The marketplace is buzzing, full of people, but there's one guy who really stands out. And, well, it's because he's living in a giant clay wine jar. His name is Diogenes, and his story, I promise you, might just completely flip how you think about money and freedom.
So one day, the most powerful man on the planet, Alexander the Great, shows up to see him. Alexander rolls up with all his generals, stands over the man in the jar, and offers him anything. Literally anything he wants. And Diogenes, without even bothering to get up, just looks at him and says, "Yes, stand out of my sunlight." What an incredible, just stunning rejection of unimaginable power.
I mean, just look at the contrast here. It's almost absurd, right? On one hand, you've got the conqueror of the known world, the wealthiest man alive, and on the other, a guy whose only worldly possessions are a cloak and the jar he lives in. This really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. Why in the world would the man who has everything be so completely fascinated by the man who has nothing?
Because here's the kicker. Alexander wasn't mad. He was just blown away. He turned to his men as he was walking away and said this. Now let that sink in for a second. The man who had it all looked at the man who had nothing, and what he felt was envy. There's something really powerful going on in that moment.
To really get this, we have to understand he wasn't just some random weirdo. We've got to go back to his origin story, which, believe it or not, starts with a huge financial disaster.
Yeah, his whole philosophy wasn't cooked up in some ivory tower. Nope, it was forged in the fire of being totally and completely ruined. And it all kicked off with a crime that would shape the entire rest of his life.
You see, Diogenes wasn't born in a jar. He grew up with money. His dad was basically a banker. But then scandal hits. He gets caught up in a scheme to devalue the city's coins, a really serious crime. And the punishment? He lost everything. His money, his house, his good name, even his citizenship. He was kicked out of his home, a total outcast with absolutely nothing left to lose.
And this is where the genius kicks in. Instead of trying to deny the charge, he just leaned into it. He decided his new mission in life was to deface the currency. Not just the metal coins, but all of society's values. He was going to prove that the things we all spend our lives chasing, wealth, status, reputation, are actually fake. They're counterfeit.
He said there were basically two kinds of this counterfeit currency. First, there's the obvious one, financial currency. Money, right? It's only valuable because we all agree it is. But the second one, and this is the one that really matters, is social currency. Think about it. Your job title, your reputation, how many followers you have. He argued this stuff traps you, it enslaves you, just as much as any financial debt.
So here's the absolute core of his idea. For Diogenes, true freedom wasn't about having a ton of money so you could do whatever you wanted. No, it was about needing so little that no one and no thing could have any power over you. It's this radical kind of independence that you get by basically redefining your needs down to zero.
Okay, so that's the ancient history lesson. But what does some guy in a jar from 2,000 years ago have to say to us right now with our smartphones and our 401ks? Well, as it turns out, a lot more than you'd think.
Diogenes makes us ask this really uncomfortable question. All the hours you work, all the energy you spend, your very life force, what are you really buying with it? Is it actually freedom, or is it something else?
He would probably argue that what most of us are building isn't a life of freedom at all. It's a luxury prison. You know, a gilded cage. It looks amazing and shiny from the outside, but at the end of the day, it's still a cage.
Does any of this sound a little too familiar? The 60-hour work week to pay for a giant house you're almost never in? The fancy car you bought that you just sit in traffic with? The constant, nagging pressure to earn more, just to keep up with the lifestyle you've already built? Diogenes would say we've become slaves to our own stuff.
And the second trap. We can call this one the social ledger. This is that endless, exhausting game we play to get approval and validation from everyone else.
You know what I mean? Carefully crafting our lives on social media, basically trading our real, messy, authentic selves for a few likes and comments. Diogenes' answer to this was the complete opposite, shameless self-possession. He would do everything out in public, not to be gross, but to make a point. Your opinion of me does not define me.
So, while we're all stressing about our financial portfolios, Diogenes was building a completely different kind. Let's call it the Cynic's portfolio. And its assets? They can't be touched by a market crash because they were never for sale in the first place. We're talking about things like your character, your resilience, and your own internal absolute freedom.
Now, this all sounds pretty intense, but how can we actually use this ancient wisdom in our lives? Well, we can actually boil his whole philosophy down to one simple practical tool. We're going to call it the sunlight test.
It's just 3 easy steps. First, name the thing you're chasing. A promotion, a bigger apartment, a new car, whatever. Second, you ask yourself one very important question. And third, you make a conscious choice based on the answer.
And this is the question. Before you go after something, just stop and ask, is this going to add to my freedom, or is it just casting a shadow over my time and my peace of mind? See, it brings us right back to that moment with Alexander the Great. Is this new thing going to stand in your sunlight?
Because this is really the key takeaway from the whole cynic way of looking at the world. You can always make more money, you can always replace stuff, but your time and your peace of mind right now, in this moment, those are your most valuable, non-renewable assets. Once you spend them, they are gone for good.
So, if we learn one thing from the man in the jar, let it be this. Real wealth isn't about collecting more stuff. It's about liberation. It's not measured by what you own, but by how little you need to be truly, deeply, and unshakably free.
And that really just leaves us with one final question for you to think about. Take a hard look at your own life, your goals, your stuff, your ambitions. What right now is casting a shadow on your sunlight?